Hello all, welcome back to the Best Self Therapy YouTube channel, which is your home for the tips and the tricks to help you manage your mental health so you can live a better life as your best self. It has been quite some time since I've been with you all. I apologize for the hiatus and not really communicating the hiatus, but I had a baby about 4 months ago, so that's taken up quite a bit of my time between, obviously bringing him into the world and then having maternity leave and juggling getting back into work. So I am excited to be back with you all, and what great month to rejoin you because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I want to take the time this month to talk about and highlight probably about 3 of the most common misconceptions or misunderstandings within mental health. So I'll highlight those. I'll talk a little bit about those. And then, of course, I don't want to ever leave you empty-handed. So you're going to get some skills, some tools, exercises to either implement immediately into your life or put in your toolbox for when you need it. And then we'll also talk about what to look for when mental health might become problematic and when we might need a professional, and then where do you find those professionals? So let's dive in. One of the biggest questions or areas of uncertainty is that wonder of, is mental health biological or environmental? And while there's a lot of research that has been done and continues to be done to really find the answer on this, there is evidence that supports both factors influence our mental health. So I'll touch on one in each area, biological and environmental, to kind of give you an idea, and then I have some other resources that I will guide you to expand on the understanding of that area. So one of the biggest biological components that can influence our mental health is this idea of predisposition, and I see it come up a lot in my work, so that's why I want to highlight it on today. So predisposition is defined as a liability or tendency to suffer from a particular condition, hold a particular attitude, or act in a particular way. So in other words, if your biological parent or parents battle and face a mental health diagnosis, you carry a predisposition for that diagnosis, which means you have a higher likelihood or tendency to also face and battle that diagnosis than someone whose parent does not face that because they don't have a predisposition. I know it can get kind of hard to understand, so I created a nice little visual, or at least I think it's nice. So I want you to take a look at this visual to better help you kind of understand and just see what a predisposition might look like and how it shows up. So for individuals without a mental health history or a predisposition, these are the individuals on the left with the glass that looks half full or half empty, however you look at it. The water represents the same level of stress. So the person on the left is experiencing the same amount of stress and level of stress that the person on the right is experiencing. However, the person on the right looks like their glass is overflowing because of that predisposition, because of that mental health family history. So, as I've written on the bottom here, predisposition lowers one's window of tolerance. Your window of tolerance is your range that you are able to intake mental health battles, setbacks, stressors, and manage them. A lower window of tolerance leaves little room for stressors before the glass begins to overflow. So that's what you're seeing on the right here. So in other words, with a predisposition, you start with a smaller glass than those without. So this can be a nice visual to better understand how that biological component of predisposition can influence mental health. Now, because you have a predisposition, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will also face that mental health battle or that you'll have a struggling with that lower window of tolerance. It's just saying it could be a potential precursor. So let's talk about some of the environmental pieces. Now for the environmental factors that can influence our mental health. There are a few of these, and I have written a blog a while back that I've linked below here that you can read to get the other factors of the environmental piece that can influence our mental health, because I'm only going to cover one here, and I'm going to cover this one because it kind of sets the stage or creates a platform, or doesn't create a platform for how you welcome mental health, how you perceive mental health, how you navigate mental health and its battles, not only then, but now. So that piece is looking at your upbringing and or your childhood. How mental health is talked about, viewed, modeled, all of that in our childhood and upbringing will influence and build or not build your ability to manage mental health and look at it and navigate it today. So when you think about your childhood or your upbringing, I want you to look at these couple of questions, of course, to kind of get an idea of maybe how your upbringing or childhood has influenced you in the mental health realm. So thinking about your childhood, I want you to answer these questions. Was mental health talk welcomed in your home? So in other words, were you able to talk about mental health, whether good or bad? Were you encouraged and welcome to express your emotions? Again, both positive and negative, and I put that in quotes, negative, just the heavier emotions, right? Were you allowed to express those, label those, talk about those, understand those? When distress was encountered, did your caregivers model how to effectively address and manage the stress? So again, these questions are just to provide and help you get a little bit of insight into how your upbringing or childhood has influenced how you view, navigate, perceive, encounter mental health and its battles today. It doesn't mean that anything was done wrong, right? It just helps you better understand where you came from and why your foundation was built or lacking. So looking at these and really getting an idea of how was your childhood and upbringing influencing your mental health? And if there are some of these that you're like, I don't like the answers to these. No, I didn't get the ability to do that. No, I don't know how to express my emotion. That's where some of that professional help can come into play. I do offer a free 15-minute consultation that I encourage you guys. The link is below to sign up. We can talk about what your history is. I can give you an idea of what working together might look like. And then of course, leave any room for questions that you might have. But if some of these answers, you don't like some of these answers to the questions, that's okay. We can explore those and there is room to shift and restructure and make your foundation sturdier. But we can't do that if we don't know where the foundation is cracking. So as I said, check out the blog link below to get some of the other environmental factors that can influence our mental health. And then also, if you're not liking your answers to some of these questions and you're wanting to restructure and break some of these down and rebuild them back up, feel free to sign up for a free 15-minute consultation so you and I can talk about what our time working together will look like and how I will guide you in doing that. So let's now dive into another very common area or misunderstanding of mental health. This next common misconception or misunderstanding within mental health isn't necessarily something that I work with clients a lot or see come in my office quite often, although I have addressed it a few times. I'm touching on it today because I see it happen more often in our society and in our day-to-day interactions and just functioning out in the world. And it's this idea of labeling someone with a clinical diagnosis just because we've seen a certain trait. So, for example, oh my God, they're such a narcissist because they have very high confidence, or they're not taking ownership for their part. While those are two very important pieces to the clinical diagnosis of narcissism, grandiosity, inflamed self-esteem, or inflated self-esteem, and inability to own their stuff and look at their own stuff. Yes, those are two clinical traits, symptoms that we look for when diagnosing narcissism. Just because someone has those tendencies and are displaying behaviors of that does not mean they carry that clinical diagnosis. So what we're looking at, the difference is colloquial terms, that's such a hard word for me to say, colloquial terms versus actual clinical diagnosis. So we want to be careful when we're talking about these things because labeling people as certain things can be very detrimental, not only to their well-being, but also your relationship and your well-being. So being careful that just because we see certain traits and tendencies of certain behaviors from somebody does not always mean they carry that certain diagnosis. We are human. which means we have personalities, which means we are all going to carry the tendency to display a certain behavior that may fall under a clinical diagnosis. But that doesn't mean we carry that clinical diagnosis. So, if you are concerned that someone you care about or that you're interacting with or whatever it might be may carry a clinical diagnosis, get them assessed. Come see one of us professionals. We can do an assessment so we can actually let you know if that diagnosis is there, and then we can provide the proper treatment plan, all of that kind of stuff. But if you're just seeing certain traits and tendencies of certain behavior, please keep in mind that doesn't necessarily always mean they carry that clinical diagnosis. We are human. We have tendencies to display certain behaviors. So keep in mind colloquial terms, which are like slang terms, versus actual clinical diagnosis. And if you are concerned that a loved one of yours is carrying a clinical diagnosis that has not been diagnosed, please go get them assessed. The last common misconception or misunderstanding in mental health that I want to dive into before providing you with the skills and the tools to put in your toolbox or implement right away is this idea of how do we have healthy conversation around mental health? Regardless of the mental health battle, depression, anxiety, grief, divorce, alcoholism, whatever it might be, it is not uncommon for people to not know how to approach that with the loved one that's battling it. So they either say really well-intentioned things that come off dismissive and hurtful, or they completely avoid it altogether, which also feels very dismissive and invalidating to the individual battling the mental health struggle. So I have another blog that goes more into depth into this, which I will link below. But one of the biggest tips I can provide in regards to engaging in healthy conversation with someone who is battling mental health is this idea of remaining curious. If you don't understand something, whether that's how the mental health battle shows up for them, or why it's even showing up for them in the first place, or why they're navigating it the way that they are, become curious. Ask questions. Ask them for understanding. If you don't know how to properly support them, become curious. You can do that through asking them, how can I best support you right now? If they don't know, which they very well may not, just be present. Sit there and allow them to experience whatever they're experiencing and just hold that space for them, that safe space for them. So that is the biggest tip I will offer you today when trying to engage in a healthy conversation with your loved one around mental health, or I think just in mental health in general. Remain curious. Be careful not to label somebody's experience for them. You can talk about your own experience, absolutely, but be careful not to project that and place that onto another person because their experience may be very, very different. Be careful not to say, well, here's what worked for me. Again, well-intentioned, but it dismisses really understanding and learning what might work for them. So become curious. Have you found anything that works for you yet? Right? Curiosity is going to be the biggest key and the best tool you can use when trying to engage in healthy conversation around mental health. I do have a blog link below that helps you identify a safe support system, but also hits on this piece of how are they engaging in mental health talk with you. So that will highlight some of the other pieces in addition to curiosity. So remain curious. If you are engaging in mental health conversation and you want it to be effective and healthy, remain curious and be respectful, of course. Okay, now time for the tools, the tips, the tricks, which this whole channel is all about. The two tools, exercises that I'm going to cover are applicable to multiple and many different types of mental health battles. So even though I reference them in regards to anxiety and depression, that does not mean you can't use them outside of that. And it also doesn't mean that if you don't carry the clinical diagnosis that you can't use them. Yes, you can. We're human. We're going to have moments of anxiety. We're going to have moments of sadness, right? So these tools are good to have in your toolbox, whether you consistently struggle with mental health or if it's more sporadic and situational. So The first exercise I'm going to cover, I'm only going to just highlight and kind of briefly review. If you want an in-depth step-by-step process of how to actually implement this exercise, I of course have a video linked below. The video references it in regards to grief, but again, the exercise itself is applicable to many different areas. So this exercise is called externalization. Oftentimes, when talking about anxiety, depression, grief, whatever it might be, clients will oftentimes communicate feeling like they're seen only for their mental health diagnosis. They're seen only for anxiety. They're seen only for their grief. They're only being seen as someone with depression, or they themselves are only viewing themselves as someone with anxiety, depression, grief, alcoholism, whatever it might be. So externalization is a great tool to use to allow you to separate yourself from the battles that you are facing. So it makes it its own entity. It makes anxiety its own thing outside of you. It makes depression its own thing outside of you. It makes grief, alcoholism, whatever it might be, its own entity outside of you, which then allows you, one, to feel like you're gaining more control of the situation and whatever mental health battle you're facing, but also allows you to speak to it and interact to it a little bit differently. So if you want a step-by-step process on how to do that, please be sure to check out the video below of You Are More Than Your Grief. Again, I reference it in regards to grief, but it's applicable, how you use it is applicable across the board. When talking about depression mainly, but again, we can use this at any point, whether we're battling depression or moments of sadness or not. One of the biggest things I encourage clients to do is find glimmers. So if you're not familiar with the term glimmer or glimmers, it's the opposite of a trigger. So a trigger is something that activates the nervous system, that brings back flashbacks, that brings up a lot of discomfort, right? And gets you in a hard mental headspace. Glimmers are the opposite of that, are things that bring you joy, that bring a smile to your face, that calm and regulate the nervous system. So these things can be as small as, especially this time of year, wherever you are, but in Minnesota, May is beautiful. And for me, one of my biggest glimmers are the crab trees or the cherry blossoms. Oh my gosh, they're in full bloom and they're just beautiful and they smell amazing. So that is a glimmer for me, and I smell them consistently, and I will literally stop and smell the roses, smell the flowers, because it just it smells so good. So for me, that is a glimmer. So I encourage you, whether you're battling anxiety, depression, grief, alcoholism, whatever it is, find those glimmers in your day that allow you to pause, be in the present moment, experience joy, regulate the nervous system, because those are going to be things that help you maintain and continue to navigate whatever mental health battle that you are facing. So 2 of the top tools that I use: externalization, there is a link below for a video for a more in-depth process, and find your glimmers. Please comment below. I'd love to hear what some of your glimmers are. And it sparks ideas too, right? You might be watching this like, gosh, I don't know what my glimmers are. Comment below for those of you who are like, oh, this is a glimmer, to help get some ideas for other people as well who may be stuck in, I don't know what my glimmers are. We have highlighted the top 3 common misconceptions or misunderstandings, or at least the most common ones that either come into my office or that I see happening out in the world in our society. We've highlighted them, we've talked about them, we've debunked them a little bit. You've also gotten 2 really great tools or exercises, the externalization exercise and then finding your glimmers, that I encourage, especially the glimmers, implement right away. We don't need to be in a tough spot to implement that. So implement those right away or stick them in your toolbox for later. But we have some tools. Now let's talk about, when is professional help needed with mental health battles? What do we need to look for? And then where do we even begin? Where do we even go to start looking for mental health professionals? So the biggest thing when talking about finding professional guidance and professional help in regards to the mental health battles that you're facing is this idea of, is it causing disruption in your daily functioning? So as I mentioned earlier, we are human, so we will have moments of sadness. We will have moments of anxiety. We will have tendencies of certain behaviors of personality disorders, but that doesn't necessarily mean we carry a clinical diagnosis and that we need professional guidance. When it starts disrupting and interfering with your daily functioning, that is the biggest warning sign or flag that we want to look for when seeking professional guidance, when that gets to a point of like, okay, now I need to talk to somebody. So disruption to your daily functioning can be something as simple as not sleeping as well. You're not eating great, or you're eating too much. If you're crying frequently, like if you're just finding like I just can't stop crying, if the anxiety is so high that you can't actually go about your day and do your things. Of course, the biggest one is if you're having suicidal thoughts, self-harming, but anything that interrupts with your daily way of functioning, that's when we want to reach out for professional guidance. Of course, you don't need to reach that severity to get to say, okay, now I need professional help. Obviously, you will know for yourself as well of like, gosh, I just really want to talk to somebody about this. Oftentimes, if you're feeling stuck, that too is a really great kind of warning sign or flag to go, okay, maybe I need someone to help me become unstuck. So if you're feeling stuck and or when things really start interfering with your daily functioning, that's when we want to reach out for professional help. So where do we do that? One of the most common search engines is Psychology Today. So you can go on Psychology Today. You can look up based on insurances if you want to use your insurance, specialties, right? If like I need someone who works in grief, I need someone who works with anxiety, you can type that in there and they'll pop up therapists. You can look based on your location if you want someone nearby. I believe you can also look up if you want virtual or in person. So Psychology Today is a great search engine to find some professionals in the mental health field. You can also Google therapist near me or grief counselor near me or anxiety therapist near me, and it will generate some options for you. So Google or Psychology Today. You can also call, if you want to use your insurance, you can also call your insurance company and say, hey, can I get a list of mental health providers that are in network with my insurance? And then off that list, you can give them a call. When you are searching for a therapist, I highly encourage you to make sure they offer a free consultation. This is going to kind of be like an interview, but it's going to allow you to explain more of your situation and make sure that they're a good fit and vice versa, that the therapist also believes they're a good fit for you and that they can best help you. So after you've done whatever Google search or psychology search, or you've called your insurance company and you found someone like based on their biography and all that kind of stuff, like, this might be a good fit. Ask them if they offer a free consultation for you to chat a little bit more about what you want to work on. You can get an idea of what they will offer you, and then you can leave room for any questions that you might have. This is something I always do with my clients to make sure we are a good fit and to make sure that I am able to serve them as best as possible. So, Psychology Today, Google search, calling your insurance company and getting a list of in-network providers. Once you do that, ask for that free consultation. And then from there, the therapist that you choose will guide you in the process. We covered a lot in this video, so take a breath, pause this video, rewind it, fast forward, do whatever you need to get the most out of this video. If you found this video helpful, please pass it along to somebody that you also believe would benefit from it. You can follow me on Instagram. You can share it there, share it on your socials. Tag me at Best Self Therapy so I can give you a shout out for spreading the word and breaking the stigma around mental health, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month. But please pass this along to anybody that you believe would benefit so this word can spread and we can help others break the stigma, get these tools, find professional help if they need to. I thank you for taking the time and joining me and welcoming me back. It's good to be back and learning these skills as well. And I will be back with you all in June. Have a happy, happy May. And here's to living a better life as your best self. We'll see you soon.